I'm pleased to welcome to the stage Katie Kirkpatrick, along with David Wilkinson, CEO of NCR Voyix, and Tim Oliver, CEO of NCR Atleos. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a unique situation to have the CEOs of two public companies up on stage with us. So come on up, and this will be a unique opportunity for you to be able to ask questions as well for two very important companies in this community.
Okay, come on, y'all can do better than that. Good afternoon. Okay, good, thank you. Well, I am pleased to sit here with two newer friends of mine, Tim and David, and I'm actually going to let them introduce themselves first and explain what the new companies are doing, because I think that's really important for all of us that understand NCR as a whole. You know, why did they split into two companies, and what does each one do? So David, and not to be confused with Dave Wilkinson, right? I think
I'm the other Dave Wilkinson.
He's the other Dave Wilkinson.
Call me David.
David, there you are. David, tell us about Voyix.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yourself.
Yeah, so I have been with NCR before we did the spin out for 14 years. And 13 of that have been here in Atlanta. I moved my family here to Atlanta as part of NCR's move of the original headquarters from Dayton, Ohio, down to Atlanta. And so we've been Atlanteans. I live up north in Alpharetta. I have a daughter who's 20, goes to the University of Tennessee, and hopefully they win the College World Series tonight, but we will see. Any Aggies in the room? I'm sorry. I'm rooting for Tennessee. On the separation side, what we do as NCR Voyix is if you think about the history of NCR, we're the retail, restaurant, and digital banking software side. So think platform software and services is what we do. So anything that powers commerce through your bank, your restaurants, or your retailers is what we're doing. All the way from the hardware that you would see in a Walmart at a self-checkout, all the way to the payments flow behind the scenes at a gas station, or if you're banking with most likely a community bank, we're powering that banking application, or it's just our application overall. We're about a little under $4 billion in revenues after the separation, with about 16,000 employees around the world.
Incredible. So even despite the separation, you're still a very large company located here, so we're glad for that. Tim.
Yeah, I moved to Atlanta 4 years ago. I moved with a new leadership group that came to the legacy NCR in aggregate. I was the CFO of the whole thing. And after a long strategic review process of being very clear, we'd be better as two separate companies. And so we spun through that. I'm now the CEO of the half. The half that I'm CEO of is the ATM business. So we have 600,000 ATMs around the world that we built, that we're the software stack on. We clear and settle the transactions, and importantly, keep them up and running. We, of those, about 100,000 of those are our own devices. So meaning we own the device and get paid by the transaction. Most typically, it's not a surcharge transaction. It's a surcharge-free transaction that our banks pay us to do on behalf of their clients. And the other 520,000 machines we run on behalf of our bank customers. And so we have both retail customers and bank customers. We're a little bigger than David's. We're 21,000 employees, $4.5 billion in revenue, and growing a little bit. I also have daughters. I have a 24-year-old and a 22-year-old. One just graduated from Miami of Ohio. She was my ice hockey captain. She's on her way to Atlanta to work for David. Thank you, David. And my other one's in New York City. She's a fledgling investment banker.
Well, I don't think there's any competition between these two. So just a reminder, it was 2009 when NCR made the decision to relocate from Ohio to Atlanta. So I know that Sam Williams is here. I believe that happened when Sam was the president of the chamber, and I remember having NCR come in and give us demos of all of their technology and share with us what they were bringing to the region and how excited we were to have NCR in the region. Subsequently, they relocated into Midtown from Gwinnett and built the beautiful building that we see on the downtown connector, right there on the edge. So I'm curious, before we get into the lesson that John asked all of us, how do you all operate in that building? And are there any requirements that you stay separate since you're now two separate companies? Tim, would you like to take that?
There's tax rules that cause us to not interoperate too terribly often. That said, David and I meet at the coffee machine every morning at 7 o'clock. We commiserate about our various boards and people who are putting pressure on us, and then we go our separate ways. They've put walls between us, but we leave them unlocked. So We share the building, we alternate floors in the building, and that's true actually around the world. We have other facilities where we do the same thing. So we're separate, but it's hard. 140 years, it's hard to really pull apart right away.
Yeah, so I'm Tim's landlord.
Again, no competition. All right, so let's go to the question that all of you hopefully discussed at your table, which was, what's the one morning ritual you can't start your day without, and what makes it such a game changer for you? David, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, my team members in the room could probably answer this question for me because I have a pretty routine schedule set in the mornings. I set an alarm for 4:20 a.m. I rarely need the alarm to get up, and from there I go right to the gym. So I have to get my morning workout, and I think what it does for me is it just sets my mind right. It's I don't take anything away from my family, but it's the time where I shut down. I physically can't think about anything else because I'm working out in the Georgia heat with no air conditioning where I work out. And so it's what I do. And then the second thing I do is I text my wife every morning. So that's my morning routine, is get the workout in, and because I'm up so early, my wife is not awake at 4:20. And then I give her a text to start the day off.
Very good. Tim?
I'm about an hour late. I'm an hour later than that.
Are you on the ice hockey rink?
What's that?
Are you on the ice hockey rink?
No. I mean, I'd love to be. A lot of my life I spent on coaching ice hockey, and that was early or late, but never in the middle. I'm an hour later than David. I get up at 5:30 every morning. I'm most effective in the morning, so I get right to the office by 6:15, and I work from 6:15 until I meet David at the coffee machine at 7. And then till about 8 o'clock, I'm really effective and no one bothers me, and I get caught up and I empty out the inbox, and then I can stand up at my desk and I'm ready to go. And meetings start at 8 and go from there. But it's made me, I've figured out I'm much more effective early in the day than I am late in the day, and so I stick to that pattern.
Well, what's interesting here is they both have a very standard routine, right? And I think that's one of the themes that we've seen in leaders is that ability to really focus on the task at hand, whether or not it's working out or getting in to clear out your inbox, right? There's a focus there that's really important from a leadership perspective. So, and when you disaggregated the company, right, the companies are smaller than NCR was together. So I would like to know how that has impacted you as a leader, right? So you've had to go through a culture change at both organizations. And as leaders, how did you approach that? And perhaps was there one thing that you felt like worked or maybe didn't work as you were separating the companies and thinking about them? We'll go to Tim first.
Yeah, we were in purgatory for a long time, right? We were one company aspiring to be two. Everyone knew that we would be two companies very soon. And keeping the hearts and minds of our employees with us was really hard. Folks didn't know what side of the house they were going to. Uncertainty makes the human mind jump right to the worst case outcome. And so a lot of our employees were very concerned about their future. They shouldn't have been, but no matter how many times we told them that, it was hard. The other was we had to ask a lot of our employees during that period of uncertainty. And they were remarkable, truly remarkable. They got us through it. But you can only say thank you and I'm sorry so many times before it falls on deaf ears. And so finding ways to keep people engaged through that was very, very difficult. Once we could give people some certainty, it got a lot better. And then we found they kind of like being together as well. So we had to find a way to make sure we still stay linked, even though we're two separate companies.
Was there anything that you found that was important besides communication? Were there activations that you took into account? Like, how did you actually engage as a leader?
Yeah, we had to define ourselves totally. We had to change stuff. We had to redefine ourselves against the template that was NCR in aggregate. Whether it's new mission statements, whether it's new value statements, whether it's a different color and a different logo and a different name, whether it's changing where people sit, elevating people to new roles. We had to define ourselves apart or people wouldn't buy into the separation. And so that was, it was fun to do, but it also required, put a huge load on our communications team to try and make that happen.
Okay, David, how about you?
Yeah, all of what Tim said around the people and then communicating back out to our customers. I mean, staying in front of our customers to make sure that they understood that the why behind what we were doing was really all about our ability to get focused as two companies to be the best that we could be in serving our customers in both industries. We serve, while we both serve banks in on some sense, we serve different customers within banks. And then other than that, our industries are very separate. So we needed to be very clear that we were doing this for the right reasons. We both also had to build new leadership teams and build 2 new boards. So that was, I think, one of the most amazing things that people don't even understand is that while we wanted to promote from within, where we had a lot of really good people inside of both of these companies, what we didn't have inside of this company, in either company, was a bench. We had one CFO as a company. His name was Tim. And we both needed CFOs for publicly traded companies. You don't just go grab somebody inside your internal finance organization and put them as a publicly traded company CFO. I needed a general counsel. I needed a CHRO. All of those things were critically important in terms of how we were building out the team. And then that sets the tone for the culture that you're going to create as a leader. So we had to build teams to start with both the board and our leadership team. And that was our focus number one, while we had really smart people looking at how do we divide these companies up.
So let's talk about that on the board recruitment side, because we know how important boards are for publicly traded companies, and they really do guide that strategic plan and provide the CEO a lot of advice. What was it like to build a new board for each of you? And how did you go about doing that? Tim, you've got a smile.
So it's tricky, right? Because you're going to report to these folks. So interviewing them is always a little touchy. I was fortunate enough I get to start over, right? I was the spin co, and so I decided a much smaller board. We had 11 or 12 in NCR in aggregate. It was too many to drive consensus. We shrunk down to 7 plus me. We cast a wide net. We tried very hard to make sure we had a diverse board. That's not always easy to accomplish, but I think we did it at least in many different metrics of diversity. But I wanted a board that, a lot of ego comes into a boardroom, right? There's probably some ego in this room too, but a lot of ego comes into the boardroom. It's not always helpful. And so I needed to find folks who took their work very seriously, but not themselves, so that they could laugh at themselves. Self-deprecating sense of humor in a boardroom is crucial. And so we tried to find folks who'd work really well together. And part of that was having an ego, but being able to manage it.
So David, what about you?
Yeah, first of all, it was a fun process. So while time consuming, you think about the leadership team and the board. That's all I did for, I felt like, 3 months, 4 months, was interview people just nonstop. We had a lot of help. But Katie Burke, who chairs my current Nom and Gov committee inside of my board, was also the chair of Nom and Gov at NCR. And she invited us in to have that conversation. And I'll tell you the lesson I learned. I went into that getting prepared. I got very prepared for that meeting, and I wrote out exactly what I wanted to get out of the board in terms of, here's the culture I wanted to create. Because I watched some dysfunction in the old NCR board as we were working through this process, to be very candid. And I knew what I didn't want, and it started me thinking about what I wanted to build. And you only get this shot once. So I was going to go for it. And I built out the criteria, not only the culture of one team, the culture of building people up and not knocking people down, the culture of having some fun doing what we're doing. And then I needed certain skills functionally and for certain markets across. So I had all that planned out when we went into it. And it was amazing how the team behind that were able to meet most of the criteria. And we did the same thing. We pulled the board down a few seats. We have 9. So it's worked out really well. And both of us, I would say, have very functional boards going through this, but very deliberate.
And then David, any legacy board members on your board from NCR?
I do. And so technically, the reality of how it works is I inherited everything. I mean, it's everything. I'm NCR. So then everybody that was on the board stayed on the board. So I kept a handful of board members. I've had 2 roll off. A couple resigned and went over to Tim's board. So we've had some clean out of the board overall. But I have good continuity across the board. And I'll tell you, the ones that are still on my board are the ones that when I stack ranked, because I did this before, I stacked ranked the board. Who are the top 2 or 3 or 4 that I want? And who are the 3 or 4 that I absolutely do not want?
You sent those to Tim.
And I sent those to Tim.
People can look up who they are.
Of course, that's a joke. Well, so building a board is one thing, right? Because that's ultimately who you report to and who guides the company. But then you had to come underneath and build that leadership team that you work with to implement the strategy every day. Were there any lessons learned for either of you as you were working through that process, maybe as a new CEO, that you were like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, or perhaps you learned something that you'd apply in the future?
Yeah, and I think I got it about right, though we're still working through, the leadership is still forming itself, right? We're 8 months into this, right, David? 8 months. About a third of my team was legacy NCR, about a third was legacy Cardtronics, an acquisition we did 2 years prior, and about a third was new. And trying to make sure that a team would interoperate well was really, really hard, because you interview with somebody, you're not quite sure how they're going to fit. I also was elevating some folks into roles that they'd never served in before, that put them on a level of exposure to the outside world that they may or may not be comfortable with because they'd never been there before. And so testing them to make sure they were ready for that spot. It wasn't about experience set or skill set. It was about maturity, business maturity, to be able to handle that pressure. And then try to make sure that they fit within the group well. Make sure that the personality types would blend. Back to the same as a board. I just wanted folks who wanted to work together, who could align quickly, who could make a decision in a room that may not be unanimous as we were making it, but when we left that room, no one else would ever know that they couldn't come between us. I thought that was super important. As David said, we saw some dysfunction as we went through the separation of the legacy company. I wanted to prevent that on my team.
Yeah, I had 80% of my team, my executive leadership team, that was new to the company. 80%. The 20% that were there are new to role. So there was no real overlap, and we significantly changed the landscape. And I had similar lessons to Tim. We tried to elevate some people, and it probably wasn't the right move at certain times. And not any fault of the people. We probably pulled some people up a little too soon. I think the key was finding people that were a good cultural fit, that had the right expertise. Now, luckily, and you know, so I'm going to give a shout out. Heidrick and Struggles did the search for both of us. They did an amazing job, and I wouldn't say that lightly around a search firm. And sorry if there are any competing search firms in the room that give me grief about that, but they did an amazing job for both of us at a time when we needed a lot of help. And so I do want to give them a shout out. I think the other thing is and Tim has done this too, we wanted to build our leadership teams here in Atlanta. I wanted local Atlanta talent. And so now you're starting to restrict the talent pool, and I can tell you with assurance is that neither of us had to sacrifice, because this is a very talent-rich environment, even looking for people that have the skills of being these key C-suite roles within publicly traded companies. We have an amazing talent pool as a community, and so now we're able to do things like bring people back into the office 5 days a week because my whole leadership team is there, and we're just walking down the halls.
Did y'all hear that little nugget? They're in 5 days a week.
Shorts on Fridays.
Shorts on Friday. That's a leadership lesson for you. So, as you were building out your teams, how important was diversity for you all? And Tim, you touched on it, I think, when you were thinking about your board, but both from a board and a leadership team perspective, how did diversity come into play for you all as you're rethinking or reimagining your teams?
You know, there's so many different vectors on diversity, and I wanted to make sure we touched most of them. It's easier in Atlanta than other places to find diverse talent, both people of color and women who are very accomplished, and so we're very fortunate that way. I also found it was easy to attract people to Atlanta, diverse talent to Atlanta, and so a lot of the folks that I hired weren't necessarily Atlantans when I hired them, but they have since become Atlantans, and they'll add to the truly terrific pool of talent that's already in this city. Look, there's plenty of folks who look like me and David on leadership teams, and we think we've got it all figured out. And populating a room with other folks who look like us is easy, right? It'd be really, really easy to do, but it's not the right thing. It doesn't drive the right dynamic in the staff meetings, the executive meetings. It doesn't drive the right decision set coming out of that group of folks. And so it was incredibly important to us that we go find diverse talent. It's not always easy to do, and some of the folks are promoted from within were with the company a long time and may have not been diverse. But and I also say diversity can go beyond those criteria as well. You know, skill sets, experience sets, sexual orientation, whatever it might be. So we've got it all matters.
David, any thoughts on diversity?
Yeah, I think we did a good job at it. I mean, we haven't done a good job holistically as a company. If I looked at my diversity metrics as a company, we have work to do. So we're starting.
We all do.
We're starting at the top. But I tell you, for me personally, I believe in diversity for the values that it brings. Just I don't care how you define diversity, but having people that are different than me sitting around a table, helping me think. I think best when I'm in a room. I think best when I'm collaborating with others, and I think best when I'm being challenged on the way I'm thinking about it. As Tim described, if Tim and I get in a room, we think a lot alike, which is not the greatest way to get better outcomes. So I like and I believe in having people around me that can challenge me, that have different experiences than I do, and have just a different perspective altogether on any challenge that we're facing. So I think you just have to believe in it to really make it happen.
It's not just a U.S. dynamic for us either, right? So David and I have customers in 140 countries. We have employees that we pay salary to in 80 countries. I have a network of ATMs in 60 countries. So we're very far flung. And diversity means different things in different parts of the world. We need to make sure we accomplish that around the globe.
It's a really important distinguishing factor is when you're a global company, those requirements look different where you operate. And so I appreciate you highlighting that because it's really important for leaders to be thoughtful about who our audience is, who our stakeholders are, and so forth. So you both, you've been with NCR for 13, 14 years. Tim, you've been in Atlanta and with the company for about 4 years. So did either of you have a mentor along the way, whether it was an NCR or in another place, or maybe it was a parent, someone that influenced you that you still reflect on today?
Yeah, I would say that I've had multiple mentors across my career. And as I think about mentoring, I think whatever season you're in your life or your career, I think mentors take on a different shape that they have for me. I had the former CEO of NCR, Mike Hayford, was probably a mentor to both Tim and I, and he believed in both of us. And that was part of the succession planning that we had done as a company, and a very thoughtful way to think about growth and getting experiences. And for anybody in the room that's a CEO, everybody tells you that you never understand how to be a CEO until you actually sit in the chair, and that is 100% true, regardless of what you think and what everybody tells you. You can't do it. I have an executive coach who's a former two-time publicly traded company CEO that still helps me every day. I meet with him twice a week or every other week, and it's somebody that I can bounce ideas off of, and I can have those conversations, and then an informal other network of CEOs that I can have conversations with. And it is, I think the mayor said it around the loneliness of the leadership position. It is lonely, and I have another CEO over here that I look to bounce things off of. But if you don't, you almost have to have a network of CEOs, because no offense to anybody else, but if you're not sitting in that chair as a CEO, you really don't understand what we have to deal with every day, and it is every single thing every day. It stops on your desk.
True.
So mentors have been important.
Tim?
I've had several as well. I had one by the name of Larry Bossidy. Larry was the CEO of Allied Signal in the go-go 90s. I quit a job as a disgruntled bond trader and tried to find myself, and Larry found me first and said, get to work. I took a 75% pay cut and went to work for him, and he moved me through 6 or 7 jobs over 6 or 7 years, and helped me transition from a career that didn't work so well to a career that worked much better. He believed in me. He gave me plenty of air cover to make the mistakes I was going to make, and I made them. But then he just kept me moving the right thing. He'd give me about 12 months, he'd move me to the next thing.
And that's a really important opportunity, is to let people fail, right? To have that ability to make a risk take a risk based on good information. If it doesn't work, they're there to pick you up and say, it's all right, we move on. What an incredible opportunity for you to learn as you were taking 75% pay cut. All right, I see our President John is up here, so
let's open it up to questions and answers. We have a mic over here. We'd ask if members would be the only one to ask questions. So Helene.
So both of you spoke about gaps in either identifying the right talent, having the right talent ready. I'm curious, after having gone through this experience, does it shape your perspective on leader development inside the organization moving forward as a result?
Yeah, absolutely. I have one member of my leadership team in the room. Trisha's here in the room. She's my chief marketing officer. She laughs because I moved up a meeting this morning. We started at 7:15 this morning on a Monday, so my team loves me for that, with a meeting just on that, succession and talent planning as we go into that cycle. So it has shaped the fact that we recognize we had a lot of gaps as a company, and for whatever reason, it's not a fault. We just weren't as focused on that in the prior company. We are focused on it now, and I realize the importance of making sure that we have the right developmental programs and the right skills within the organization to make sure that we don't get caught that way again. Yeah,
I'm much more aware that gaps exist. My own gaps, you had some gaps. I'm much more aware that those gaps exist, and we work much harder to fill those internally and make sure that people are getting the training necessary to build a bench back up. When you go through separation like this, you dilute the bench pretty dramatically, and so we need to build that bench back up.
Bill.
Very honest answer.
So along the same lines, one question I have for you. We've got a lot of CEOs in the room. We've got a lot of board people, a lot of people who put together boards. When you guys were chosen for your half of NCR, love you to spend a minute or two on why were you the right person at the right time in this era of the company. And then the harder question is, as you take a step back and you said, oh my God, I got this job and I'm sitting in the chair, what are the 2 or 3 skill sets or people or types that I'm going to need to prop me up or to make me be the best CEO I could be?
Yeah,
I think you have 30 seconds each, and John's going to catch up.
On the why me, why now, I know our industry really well, and we had a strong followership within the company. And I had a strong vision for what we needed to be as a company moving forward. And I think the current leadership and the board saw that vision and saw what we could do in terms of executing against that strong vision. So I would tell you, it's just more about the experience that I had and the track record that I had built up within the company.
Yeah, I was not an obvious choice. Being a finance guy, I'd be a CFO forever. And so I was halfway decent at that job. I think I had a good rapport within the organization, helped drive the transaction that transformed our company. I'd been with us for a period of time. I knew the team well, and I was committed to learning. I was committed to getting better. I was okay with being a first-time CEO and figured I could find my way there. And so the board made a big jump and let me do the job.
Okay, wait, there was a second part. Skills,
Yeah,
perhaps skills that you felt like needed to be around you.
Yeah, the second part of that is we were making the transition. So we were this NCR company that was this kind of hardware legacy company making the shift to platform software and services. We needed to become and still need to transform to be a product-led company versus a sales-led company. And sales-led companies, we did a lot of things for a lot of people, and it was a lot of custom type stuff. And you come in and we'll do anything you want for you, but we need to be more of a product-focused company. So tech experience, how do we get better product experience inside of the doors? And I already talked about I needed a bunch of people with public company experience on public company type roles like CFO, general counsel, CHRO.
We lacked accountability in the organization, and so I had to go find leaders who are comfortable holding people accountable, which isn't always easy, and importantly, being held accountable without blame, without judgment, just make commitments to one another to keep them. And so I looked really hard for folks who'd done that and demonstrated that skill.
That's an incredibly hard person to find, someone that is comfortable with holding people accountable. I may need to learn from you. David.
Two-part question, following Bill's going. First one is, you are, in terms of dealing with the community as 2 separate organizations, but you operate everything under the NCR Foundation, which is unified. Do you guys have different approaches to how you deal with the community, especially dealing with Atlanta now that you've been separated? That's part one. Part two is a branding question. Your names are probably having sort of not hyphenated, but NCR, Atleos, and Wax. What is the game plan for where you're going to be taking the branding so that you guys can really stand out on your own as independent companies?
The foundation, we kept it as one legal entity because it really should stand alone from the company anyways. We're perfectly in line to what we should be doing with those. With the pillars that we give along, we've not changed them. We do give all over the world. I was talking earlier about the fact that we've got communities in the Philippines or in Argentina or in India or in Serbia or in war-torn Ukraine that we've tried to help out through periods of and I tell you that the US dollar goes a long ways in some of those locations, far further than it does here. We've also given a lot to support the Atlanta community because this is our home. And we feel really it's important to attract talent to this town and to continue to hire folks who are local to help build our companies up. So the foundation is likely to stay one for a period of time. If we split it, we'll both fund it really handsomely. I don't think, even if we're separate, we'll ever change what we give to. We care deeply about STEM education for all those who can't get it or haven't gotten it the way that they should have in the past. We want community development matters a lot to us. We think the communities with which we live and work are important, and we need to prop those up where we can. and importantly, disaster recovery. It feels like disasters happen more often around the world, and some folks don't have the ability to recover. We give to that.
Yeah, on the naming side, we kept NCR purposefully in both names. It has brand recognition. When we polled the internal team, so think about the NCR, the 30,000+ NCR employees when we were one company, there was a tremendous amount of pride of place in terms of NCR. And then when you talk to our customers on both the banking and the retail and restaurant side, they all understood and knew who the NCR brand was. So we didn't want to lose that narrative. And then it had some also benefit in the investment community as well. But we also knew we needed to create new identities for both teams. So we spent a lot of time with our team, some outside help in terms of coming up with where we are in the names. Where we go forward, we'll see. I mean, we'll play that out. We could keep NCR in both, or we could drop the front end of both. We've set ourselves up to where we have optionality, both legally, how we register those marks, and what we're doing in terms of protecting both of those names, but also giving us the rights to use NCR moving forward as we see fit.
Lee, before you ask your question, come on up to the mic, but Tim, share with us how the Atleos name came together, because you had shared that story with me briefly, which I thought was quite interesting.
Well, David and I both hired a really expensive outside consultant to tell us how to do this. And they'd done the GE split, they'd done the Kellogg split, right? And so they came to us with about 4,000 names, and then legal department got a hold of them and nixed them all and said no, because there's some country somewhere where that word is offensive or somebody's got that. It became very, very difficult, and it actually became a gating factor on our ability to get the separation done. And so David and I sat down with a notepad and started writing down things we liked and started Googling the names ourselves. And we said, you know what, we're going to go with these. And we pushed through we decided the legal team had to stand down. We pushed through new colors, new logos, and new names. But after all those consultants were paid, we just named our companies.
True entrepreneurs, good job. Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee Zach from Agnes Scott College, and we prepare global leaders, women of every identity, to be global leaders. You chose Atlanta. Can you tell us why Atlanta as a global corporation, and what can we do to enhance Atlanta's image as a place for global corporations and global education?
Yeah, well, first off, it's the Silicon Valley of the Southeast. So we have a lot of really good tech talent. We have all of the fintech industry.
East Coast. East Coast.
I'll say East
Okay,
Coast.
thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Think bigger.
I'll think bigger. Thank you. I'll accept the feedback.
Just holding you accountable.
But no, we have a lot of tech talent, and as Tim described, it's just a great place to live. We have a commitment of people like the people in this room in terms of great business leaders that are committed to giving back to the community. We have an amazing group of fellow citizens around us around education. The university system is amazing. We have great access to health care. The weather's amazing. I do like the heat, so the weather is amazing. There's a lot of really positive things that we have going for us as a city, as a community, and as a region. And I think on what we need to do, I do spend time with Katie on the Metro Atlanta Chamber. I think the new branding of what we're building for Atlanta is very powerful, and highlighting the things around building a community where people want to raise their families. That becomes first and foremost. If you can't raise a family where you want to live, it's really hard to attract people to stay in a city like Atlanta or in a community like Atlanta. So I think the team is doing all the right things in terms of how do we promote that. I think we could get the word out a little bit more on the tech talent and what a strong group of people we have here that are tech forward.
Quality of life, really good here. I've lived a lot of places. I've lived in 16 states. The quality of life here is exceptional. Our airport is fantastic. If you're a global company, that airport makes all the difference. It gets you home far faster than any other way to spend a little bit more time with your family. The education pool in this state is unbelievable. Kids grow up here, they want to go to school in this system, and then when they finish their school, they want to stay here, and that makes a huge difference for us.
So let me ask you a final question. You mentioned that, David, you have a coach, and many people in this room probably are wondering about coaching, and I wonder to what extent, and you have a coach, but how does coaching manifest itself in your organization, and would you encourage executives and leaders in this community to get a coach, and is it beneficial up and down the line of your executive team?
Yeah, I would say yes, it is beneficial up and down the line. We talked about it in the meeting I had this morning talking about succession. Who do we think needs a coach and for what reason? I don't know that in all cases coaching is the silver bullet for everybody, but there are certain people that need coaching. I think mentoring takes a role, just getting, we'll call it a buddy system, reverse mentoring, just spending a little bit more time listening to your employees or your peers or others is critically important. So I believe in all of those forms of feedback, but coaching has been very valuable to me the way I've used it. It may not always be the right tool, but it is a valuable tool to have in the toolbox.
Yeah, I have a coach/therapist. No, I've always had a coach, particularly when you move into a new role and you have some self-doubt about whether you can pull these roles off. It really is helpful to have someone to tell you what your shortcomings are, importantly, how to fill those shortcomings. For the other side of the coin is I coached for the better part of a decade elite girl athletes. And that coaching made me a much better executive today. So I would encourage everybody not just to have a coach, but to go coach. Go find a way to coach others. It rounds you out and lets you learn things about how to motivate people. I don't know any other way.
Katie, you are an excellent moderator. Ask great questions. David and Tim, we're so pleased that your organizations are here in our community. You've done a wonderful job. Let's give them a hand, please. And in the spirit of ending on time, we are a minute and a half ahead of schedule, but I want to thank all of you. This is a photo I took at the beginning of the meeting to just thank you folks, Rotarians. Also thank all of the Rotarians that are visiting today and all the guests that are with us. Please come up, thank our panelists, and have a great Rotary Day. We're adjourned.